Mental Health Mondays ignite the spark. Hope guides each step, even in the dark. New week, new dreams to see. Hope's the key to what's meant to be.
Good Monday, everyone. This is Mental Health Mondays with Hope. I am Hope. And tonight we have a great guest. I just love her to pieces. Before we get into that, please, I'm asking everyone, check us out every Monday night, 6 to 6:30-ish, where we talk about different topics pertaining to mental health. And also, if you have not subscribed to the PA Empowerment Network yet, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It is free. It doesn't cost you any money, but it helps us grow our brand here. And you can also see a lot of other great podcasts here on the PA Empowerment Network. So go ahead and subscribe. If you'd like to follow also specifically the programs that I'll be doing, I do have a Facebook page called Mental Health Mondays with Hope. So tonight's guest is a wonderful friend of mine. Her name is Louise Hayes. And not only is she my friend who moved all the way to Florida, but we're not going to hold her, we're not going to say anything about that. But she is also an author. And we're going to talk about her life, but we're also going to talk about her book and how she got there, Disintegrating into Adulthood, My Journey Through the Abyss of Anorexia and Alcoholism, and How I Walked and Wrote Myself Well. So let's welcome Miss Louise Hayes. How are you this evening?
I'm good, thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Exciting day for you down in Florida. Kids went back to school today.
My youngest daughter is a junior in high school, so she started.
That's crazy.
Yep.
I mean, seriously, I remember when she was in our little kid basketball program.
When she was, I remember we started the track club, and she couldn't even participate because she wasn't in kindergarten yet. So,
right. So Louise and I go back. We go back a ways, and she has had just so many things in her life, and that have led her to where she is now with her wellness. But I'm going to let Louise tell you about herself. So tell us about you.
About me. Well, yes. I am a mother, first and foremost. That is my most prized role. I have 2 kids. My son's 20. My daughter is 16. I've been married to my amazing husband, Greg, for 20 years as well. But yeah, I grew up in Connecticut. I grew up in a wonderful, loving house. My parents are still married 54 years. And my childhood was, I always described it, it's the ideal childhood. From birth to age, I'd say 12, 13, 14. I couldn't ask for a better childhood. And things took a shift for me mentally between 8th grade and 9th grade. And a whole different host of factors that I've only come to realize how they all played together in recent years. Coalesced at the same time, and I fell into depression and anxiety, and it all manifested as anorexia. So that was the beginning of my mental health struggles. I struggled with that for throughout high school, acutely in freshman year, and then even worse again. Then I plateaued a bit for the middle years of high school. I was okay. I was doing things mentally. I wasn't 100%, but I was able to participate in life and go to school and do sports and do all those things. Senior year wound down, I used it almost as an excuse. And by the time I graduated high school, I was almost 6 feet tall and I was barely 100 pounds. And I went into a program the day after I graduated high school. And that was definitely that is where I sort of got the title for the book that I did write, Disintegrating into Adulthood. People always ask, that sounds like such a negative title. It's because right at the cusp where most of my peers were, embarking on life's adventures, going to college, starting careers, doing whatever. I was back in a mental hospital in a children's ward, not growing up, basically.
Right.
So that was, and I missed the first semester of college, and things just precipitated after that. Like I just couldn't quite get my bearings. Being late to college, couldn't make the right social connections, and then in college, of course, there's you're on your own for eating. There's alcohol involved, which I did stay away from for like the first year because of the
Mhm.
calories, and that scared me. But at one point, I decided that I had some at some party, and not very much. I remember just the way it made me feel like, huh, I could relax. I hadn't felt relaxed in probably a decade. And
Wow.
like that, that was like, I remember it distinctly. I remember the room I was in, the friends I was with. And I remember calling my father afterwards and being like, hey, Dad, I had some drinks. And he was actually excited because that meant I was being like normal.
Normal.
But then, of course, that took on a life of its own. So, but I've always been a writer since I was a kid. I used to write poetry. I loved my English classes the most in high school. I actually just spent an afternoon with my AP English teacher
Oh, great.
this past summer because he teaches at a college where my daughter's looking to go, and just spoke with him about everything. It was kind of coming full circle. But I've always loved writing. I always wanted to be an author. But I didn't really get that in college. I felt like the only trajectories for English majors was like teaching or go on to grad school and law school. And I was so tired of school. Because I was a perfectionist, and like I had lost the itch to learn. I was just following the trajectory that I thought I was supposed to follow, and I wasn't enjoying life anymore. So I didn't have a path. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And that was kind of definitely, that was my early 20s, was just, I didn't know what I was doing, what I thought I was supposed to do. And I drank a lot
Right.
and I got straight A's. I would do my term papers and turn them in and get, amazing write things back, and my papers copied and handed out to other classmates and stuff. And meanwhile, I knew that the night after I drank, I was, the night that I finished those papers, I completely, went out and drank and was a disaster. And I ended up leaving college after 2 years because I kept getting locked out of my dorm room. At that point, I was still 20, not supposed to drink at campus. And I kind of felt, I didn't really want to leave, but I kind of felt forced. I had every intention that I'd be going back, but it just, I had to leave at that time. And
Right. Looking back now, knowing everything you know just about life in general, you think it's kind of normal for someone in their 20s to kind of not know what they want to be when they grow up?
definitely, I mean, it's 100% normal now that I have a son who's about to be 21.
Right.
But he actually knows exactly what he wants to do, and he always has. But that is not the norm. And
No, it's not.
joke with a lot of his peers and his friends who are, I'm like, what are you majoring? What do you want to do? They're like, I don't know. I'm like, that's exactly, I said, I don't think you need to know. It's good to
Right.
have, it's good to follow your interests. And, but I said, there is a definite difference depending on, like, this school I went to was a typical New England liberal arts college where you don't necessarily graduate with a career. You graduate with a lot of
Right.
life lessons, and there's such a value in that. I also think there's value depending on the kid. Where my son's going to school at the University of Miami, it's very career focused, and he was basically told by the basketball team he works for that if his next 2 years working for the team is basically a job interview, like
Right.
so different. Whereas my daughter's looking at the liberal arts colleges and possibly grad school. But I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Sure.
When I was asked at like 16, 17, 18, the only thing I could ever tell anyone I wanted to be was a mom, which was so, like I said, my mom was part of like the women's movement of the 70s, like all these things that like your daughter who could have the world. And I'm like, I want to be a mom. But you can't just like snap your fingers and become a mom. There's a lot of things that have to go in. But that was just, so I always laughed about that. It was like, I didn't have any 10-year plan.
Right.
What I wanted to be, I wanted to do something fulfilling and it's a career, but I didn't know what that would look like.
Right.
I wish I'd been given lots of different opportunities. I said, screenwriter, this, that, like all these different things I possibly could have gone into, but I kept being told teacher, and I'm not a morning person. And honestly, that was the biggest. getting up early every day for the rest of my life. But yeah, so I said to talk about I'm trying to, like I said, I wrote my whole story in a book. I wrote a memoir. So to try to condense that into something quick is basically saying that I did leave college. I took some courses at other colleges. I was living at home for a bit. I then transferred to a different college in New York City. I was at Vassar College first, and then I transferred to Barnard. But I did not last more than a couple months there because I had New York City at my fingertips. And same thing, I would be writing papers and then going out and getting drunk and riding the subway. And yeah, it was not a good. It's amazing I survived is how I look at it.
Wow.
But I did meet my husband within the first 2 weeks of being
here. Okay. Well, there we go.
Yeah. So it wasn't a complete waste. Yeah. And I met him one night, and he's tall, and that was the reason I went up and talked to him. We'd had a on and off again tumultuous relationship for a couple of years, but in the end, it worked out, obviously. But yeah, I was drinking a lot. I went to a rehab program then. This was 2002. I was 22 years old. I went into and I stayed sober for over 90 days. But then just like I said, because in my book and my life, I talk about the connection between anorexia and alcoholism. So I stopped drinking for those 90 days, but I lost 10 pounds. And I was already thin. I didn't need to lose 10 pounds. And I kept telling the therapist I was seeing, in the program, the therapist I saw on the side, I still talk to this day. She's an amazing woman, a huge influence in my sobriety. But she understood it, the connection. But I remember the program I'd go to, they'd be like, "Oh no, your eating's fine. You don't need to worry about that. You need to focus on not." I was like, no, it's all connected. Like is something else going on. And it basically turned out my therapist from back then said that my underlying diagnosis is actually OCD.
Okay.
Manifests as, and it now still manifests as order, cleanliness. There's lots of rules in my house, all those types of things, but they're not killing anyone. They're not killing me. So it's kind of the lesser of all these evils that I have used throughout my life. I did get pregnant, and that a lot of people, that would be not the best option when you're struggling with a substance abuse issue. But for me, it was a reason enough to stop for at least those 9 months and months afterwards. It was a very tumultuous time. It was not a planned pregnancy, but it turned out for the best, and had my beautiful son. He was healthy and smart and amazing. And for the next 10 years or so, 10, 15 years, 10 years, for the next 10 years, my mental health was pretty good. My eating had stabilized because being pregnant for me made me love my body because it gave me a beautiful child. And then 4 years later, another beautiful child. And my drinking, I'd say there was 1 or 2 times per year where it was obvious that I still had a problematic relationship with alcohol, where I would black out and drink way too much and scare the crap out of my husband. But for the most part, I could go out to dinner, have a drink or two, be fine. I wasn't craving it. I wasn't thinking about it all day long. And the majority of the evenings, I was not intoxicated. Being a stay-at-home mom with my 2 little kids was the dream I envisioned, and I loved it, and I was happy. As they got older and they needed me less in certain ways, and I guess it's kind of that midlife crisis type thing you talk about too. I got into my mid-30s, and I was like, what am I going to do when my kids don't need me anymore? I didn't have a plan. I didn't know, I still loved writing. But at that point, like I just, and I know this is a Pennsylvania show, but I said for me, Pennsylvania, where we lived was too far away. I was a city girl. Like I love New York City. I love the big city. And I just felt stifled a little bit. I wanted outlets. I wanted to go places. I wanted to go to museums and concerts and sort of live again. And I felt like where I was living was isolating me a little bit more than I liked. When maybe if we'd lived closer to, a bigger city, or even in, say, like downtown somewhere, like where I could walk around, it could have been a little different. But I also always wanted to live by the beach, and I was just starting to like count down the years, and my kids had to get up super early for high school or middle school. My son went to middle school in Pennsylvania, and it was like a 6:30 bus, and I was miserable. I said I'm not a morning person.
Right.
I can't do this for 10 more years. There was a whole bunch of reasons, but I was getting more and more, the depression was coming back as sort of trying to look again down the next 10 years of my life and not knowing what that was like. And, you know, the grocery store started bringing in fancy beers, and I started making friends that like to go and have bonfires and drink a lot, and it just became very normal. I took it to another level, but I was miserable, and I tried some therapists. I drove all the way to New York City to see my old therapist. I did all sorts of stuff, and nothing was clicking. I would drive to New York City, spend the day in therapy, and come back home and stop at the liquor store. Like, it wasn't working.
Okay.
And as you know, I was coaching. I was doing everything. Like, I was still trying. I was going to the gym every day. I was coaching my kids in sports, but like every night I would get home and I would drink until I fell asleep. And I didn't want to live like that anymore. And an opportunity came up for us to move to Florida, and it seemed like it could solve all my problems, which it didn't, but it did solve a lot of them. And we jumped on it, and we moved down here. I moved down ahead of my family.
Right.
6 weeks ahead of my family, just because we had the apartment and because my mental health was really bad. Like, I was contemplating suicide. I didn't tell people that, but I was having these thoughts all the time, and I just was desperate. And my husband knew it. He didn't say it in many words, but the fact that like, no one understood. My mom was like, why are you moving down ahead of it? Why are you doing, like, I was like, no, I need to go. And I did not stop drinking during those first 5 weeks, but around the 6th week, I think my family, they postponed coming down another extra week, actually. Nothing significant. I always talk about with alcohol addiction, there's not always a rock bottom. There isn't, it can be for some people. It can involve, I did have a DUI when I was 21. I did get arrested in New York City when I was 22 for kicking a window in or something. I don't remember. And I did have run-ins with the law. I did have the cops come to my apartment here in Florida when I was living by myself because I walked into the wrong apartment, like dumb stuff I did when I was drunk. Nothing ever came, like, they were big issues. I've met women that have had horrible things happen. You losing your kids, losing jobs, losing your accidents. I didn't have this time, like, bottom. I always say that I was hitting ledges on my way down. I kept bumping into things, and it was more just, I knew that if I kept it up, I would not be alive for many more years. Physically, my blood, liver enzymes were abnormal. Like, everything my body was revolting. I mean, my eyes were yellow. I felt like crap all the time. And I woke up one morning after meeting a sober musician a few weeks before and hanging out with him and getting influenced by him a little bit and chatting with him. And I spent the night before listening to him play music and then watching the stars at the beach. And I just said, you know what, I'm done. And I woke up the next day and I looked in the mirror and I said, I'm done. I'm not going to drink anymore. And I poured what I had down the drain. I went and saw a friend that day that lived near an hour away. And I said, it's just one day at a time. I don't know. I just said I was going to drink, and the next day I wasn't going to drink. And my mom always jokes that I'm a perfectionist. So when I made my decision to not drink, like, she's like, I kind of figured you were never like that. It started, like, a week started to pile on. And I didn't go to 12-step meetings. I did in my early 20s. It wasn't, they work for a lot of people, and I still contemplate to everyone. So now I look up meetings around here and maybe I'll go. I met someone who runs one, and I have nothing opposed to them. They save people's lives. They're wonderful. They just wasn't my the way that I did it.
Right.
For me, I started channeling my creativity started to come back. It was within weeks of
That's great.
Clearing the sludge out of my body and my brain. I have a poem I wrote about that. It said something, I think, one of my 1-year poems. One of them that says, it took like a couple months for my body to heal, 6 months for this, and like then for the words to come back. Like, it was just, it took, and I can even look at the progression of my poetry and my writings. The stuff I wrote in the first year of sobriety is pretty rough.
Right.
Like my 18-year-old poetry or my teenage poetry. And then as I got further along, it got better and better, just as I got more in touch with myself. But I would find myself, because I used to drink in the evenings. There were days definitely near the end where I was drinking all day or throughout the day. Mm-hmm. There was a time in Pennsylvania I went to my kids' soccer photos and I was drunk the whole day. My son's 14th birthday, drunk. I just kept in it. Like, that's one of my lowest, though that memory is pretty low. Yeah. My husband, he was wondering, it's just, but I would go out in the evenings and walk. and walk and write and walk and write. And by the end of 2 or 3 years of sobriety of almost doing that every night, I had a book.
Right. And we're going to talk about that book in a minute. And no, we're good, Kendall. We're going to keep rocking and rolling here. So I know you said that, this is a Pennsylvania show. Yes, the studio is in Pennsylvania, but we go all over because, we are on the internet. And I know that we invited, I know I posted it in the Sobriety Sisters group. There we go. There's the book right there. And I know that I posted it in the Sobriety Sisters group, which is over 64,000 women strong. And I'm sure they're in different places than just Pennsylvania and Florida. So hello to everyone who's joining us from the Sobriety Sisters to support Louise in our podcast tonight. So how long have you been sober now?
I said 6 years and 2 months and 11 days. So yeah, since May 30th, 2019.
That's great. That's great. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Very proud of you. You know that.
One day at a time.
One day at a time. That's right. That's right. Everything in life is one day at a time. And it's great to have, like you said, that, that big goal. I bet your 10-year goal now is just to remain sober, right?
Definitely. Keep writing.
Yes, and keep writing. So, I mean, we're talking about the kids earlier, and, my baby's 26. And, everybody had that fear of me being divorced, that, oh no, what is she going to do when he goes off to college? And the thing is, it's a whole new adventure, which I'm sure you're already learning, with Zachary. It's just a whole new adventure. It's just a different level to your relationship with your child. And, if we knew that maybe when we were younger, we might not stress out about it as we're getting to that time period where our kids, we're going to be leaving the nest. But you have a great relationship with your family. Was there a time that it was strained because of this? Lost you, girl. I don't know if you're still talking, but I've lost you. So maybe, hopefully you can hear me. Okay, I'm going to keep going. While we're waiting to get Louise back in here, I have to tell you about her book, Disintegrating into Adulthood. I bought my copy, and I bought a copy for someone who is in recovery. Hey, you back?
I had a phone call came in and.
Oh no. Well, I'm telling a quick story and then we get back. I'm telling the story about when I bought your book for myself and then for an individual who's in recovery. And I think I shared this with you, that when I gave the individual the book, besides the ugly, what do they call that? Ugly crying, the tears, the person opened the book, just randomly opened the book and read the first passage that they saw. And it just sent them into more tears, because it was just so spot on, so perfect, something that they needed to hear. Have you felt that with your book? Have you heard that from people, that this is your journey? You're telling your journey, but it's touching them and reaching them in a way that things that they needed to hear.
Definitely. That I have definitely heard that from just about everybody who has read my book. I haven't sold a ton of them, but I have probably a couple hundred, and almost everyone that I know, from whether it's a sobriety group or a friend, a childhood friend, family member, I've only heard good things back, and that they understand themselves better. And I've had other people who've read the book who are, have loved ones that suffer from addiction or eating disorders, and it's helped them understand their loved one better, which is definitely a goal of mine. So yeah, that is why I wrote it. I didn't, write it to toot my own horn. I wrote it
Right.
because first of all, I knew I had a compelling story, and I knew it could help other women. And I also wanted to talk about the process of writing was part of my recovery. It was the main part of my recovery, was getting the emotions. I always have people say, when you stop drinking and stop using a substance, you're still having to deal with life. And it's like all the things that you'd numbed for years. And for me, it had been almost 25 years of numbing some one way or another. It came as like a tsunami of emotions. And the only way that I could get them out in a constructive way was to just purge out poetry for me. And I tell people, whether it's journaling, whether it's poems, whether it's, however, just writing down phrases and words and then compiling them later, like it can really, really help, whether it's letter writing or anything, like just painting, whatever kind of creative outlet, it can be so cathartic. And that is very much the story of how, why I wrote the book and what I hope other people get out of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for people, they're listening. I mean, I think, they're like, but I'm not a writer, but journaling, I feel, is something that anybody, and and also, I feel writing in general, people might say, oh, I'm not a writer, but it's just putting your thoughts on paper. And maybe it's in the form of poetry. Maybe it's just, in the form of putting your thoughts on paper. And, anyone can do it to help heal. But, as far as doing it well, then, and being as creative as you are, that's a gift. That's a gift. But I have to ask, did you ever think that this would be the first book that you would write? Like this topic would be the first book that you would write?
Yes, actually, in the last 10 years, because I had a lot of stories from my time in New York City and other things. And I used to tell some of my friends even in Pennsylvania, and they're like, you need to write these down. You need to write a book. You need to do this. So part of me had a feeling either that or it would be some sort of fictionalized version of some of the. But as my sober journey, it became evident that this is a story I need to tell. And like you said, you don't have to be a writer to benefit from, a quote unquote, writer that wants to publish a book, but getting the things out of your head, whether it's embarrassing things, like there was chapters in here that my husband didn't know about, some of the interactions with police, or just embarrassing things that I didn't, but instead of ruminating about them in my own mind over and over again, now they're in here and I don't have to think about them anymore. Like they're there, they're gone. And if I second guess, did that really happen? It's like, no, you have it's in there. So,
right.
And that's
is there anything, that you didn't put in the book that you maybe wish you would have, or maybe thought of later? Maybe we have a sequel.
I think maybe a little bit more would be nice about just my own the recovery journey. I sometimes feel like talking about the writing process a little bit more, but maybe talking about the different types of recovery, maybe giving more tools for women who want more of a structured type of recovery, whether it's like, this listing off of things or giving more examples, because there are so many different programs these days that I've learned so much about. There's like the Facebook groups that have their own set of rules and set of meetings. There are the traditional AA meetings. There's Smart Recovery. My old therapist runs a place called the Foundation for Change. Like there's tons of different types of resources that you can utilize. And but no, I think my book stands as it is. And I did publish it before I started doing a lot of service work, so that is like the next chapter, but there's not really much to write about that. I feel like a natural sort of in the process of trying to get my book out into the world. I was reaching out to more and more women, especially that are sober and are sober curious, and trying to help with that in many different facets, and different types of peer support groups. So
I'm thinking something, because you and I we do things together every now and again. Something like similar to the Vagina Monologues, but about sobriety.
Yeah,
a whole series of skits from different women who are telling a story about their sobriety. So anyway, sorry, didn't mean to get those wheels turning.
I love when your wheels turn, Hope.
So let's talk a little bit about the anorexia and the alcoholism, because you talked about, not everybody understands how they're intertwined. So tell us a little bit about that so people have a better understanding.
Okay. To me, it basically comes down to it's all a way of exerting control when you feel like the world is spinning off its axis and you can't sort of grasp onto anything. It is a way of making things like the big picture very, very small. So like the eating disorder to me when I was a teenager was a way of everything was so complicated. There were so many things in my life as a teenager, and yet counting calories and reducing my intake was very simple. And I did it to such an extent that became my entire focus. So it quieted down the OCD thoughts, the anxious thoughts, all those things. And conversely, the drinking also shut down those thoughts and allowed me to rest. I feel like sometimes the last 6 years I haven't given myself enough permission to take naps or rest, because when I was hungover, there were days I couldn't do anything because I was so physically ill. And sometimes I feel like I drank so that I could be able to relax.
Right.
But there is a huge correlation between substance use and eating issues, whether it's binge eating or bulimia or anorexia or overeating. They're very much intertwined. And I think I saw a statistic that for women, especially, almost 70% of women who have an alcohol issue also have some sort of issue with their diet and their eating and their unhealthy body image type things. And they go hand in hand.
Right, right. Now, I mean, I've seen pictures of you throughout your life, and you were never someone, to me, visually, that, had a weight issue, and you've always been beautiful. What type of body dysmorphia was involved in that, or was it really just all the OCD? I mean, did you see yourself? Because you hear a lot of, when people talk about eating disorders, like they see themselves differently than what they really are, which also happens with people with weight loss surgery. They see themselves still being big. Did you see yourself differently than what you really were in the mirror?
Honestly, there might have been, I fixated on things, like, especially as a teenager. I fixated on my stomach. I fixated on like something on my neck that's ridiculous. Like my neck didn't change. The neck's the same. But I would fixate on my stomach. Like after I ate, that it would be bigger. I would fixate. But I knew that I was never overweight.
Right.
For me, there was some sexual type issues with peers, not like sexual abuse, but just interaction with before I was ready to be sexually active. Let's put it that way. That made me very uncomfortable in my own skin, and
Gotcha.
so that was what precipitated it, along with other academic and peer pressures and other things around the age of 14 that made me very uncomfortable. And so that became an easy. I was an athlete too, so there was all those things. But I never once thought that I was overweight. It was more, I do notice though, there are times where still to this day, if I see a picture of myself where my head isn't in it, which sounds kind of creepy, but like if I look in the mirror, it could be anyone's body. I am a lot more, I look at that a lot more objectively than I would with myself. And I do that now on purpose. Like I will look at things and look at like, hey, your legs look just fine. Because I still get those thoughts and I still have to shut it down all the time.
Yeah.
And I've been the same weight, a very healthy weight. I eat what I want. I had cake for lunch today. Like it doesn't with a protein bar. But like I do have to sometimes objectively like talk myself down and be like, no, you're fine.
Okay.
But yeah, there is a little bit, like, because I would focus on certain things and I couldn't see it at the time, but intellectually I knew. I knew like what my weight was and that where I fell, and I knew that it was, but it doesn't stop me wanting to change things.
Sure. Now, if people are looking at you right now, they'll see that you are a thin, tall, athletic woman. There's no doubt in my mind, I mean, that you are not healthy. You are absolutely healthy. And tell us a little bit, because I mean, I know, but tell everybody that doesn't really know, what you do. What do you do with food? You are vegan, correct?
No,
No?
I'm
Vegetarian?
I eat, there are many days that I eat primarily vegan, I would say, but I do eat cheese, I do eat yogurt,
Okay.
I do eat dairy products, and I probably eat fish like once or twice a month.
Okay.
but technically it's pescatarian.
Right.
But I do eat majority of vegan foods. I eat tons of tofu, beans, nut butters, seeds, tons of vegetables, fresh fruits. I do eat a lot of protein bars because I'm busy on the run and they digest easily. So I'm always buying different protein bars just to vary it. I make a lot of whole grains. You know, I try to eat a balanced diet. I do a lot of baking. I said I do. I'm still very much a home baker. I do make sourdough bread. I do homemade protein cookies, nut butter thing. It's just homemade granola. So I try to eat a balanced diet. It's you know, nothing's. I also give myself a lot of leeway. Nothing's perfect. I don't have rules.
Wow.
It is still hard for me sometimes to eat breakfast early. Like especially early mornings. Like I like to start my day with fruit. And if I have very strict schedule, my OCD is still very much a big part of my life. So I try to, you know, but as far as exercise, I just walk. I try to do some, like body weight push-ups against like the railings at the beach and some squats. I hate the gym. I go only like once or twice a month because it gets my husband there and he needs to work out. So I'll try. Because I'm a guest, like he can bring me as a guest, so I go. So
Gotcha.
but for the most part, I just like to walk. I walk, you know, 4 or 5 miles a day if I can.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So a little bit about the Sobriety Sisters. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Actually, I'm not really with them anymore. So.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know.
Group, I can't mention it. They are a phenomenal resource on Facebook. They have live meetings. I have parted ways with them for a myriad of reasons, but they're a resource. They help women all the time. I still have tons of friends in there. Women I remember up from their day ones and now have over a year. So that is great. There are so many. There's tons of groups. If you go onto Facebook and look up groups and type in sober and sober women, you will find so many different resources, and almost all of them also have like online chats. So it's like 24/7 support. They have, the Sobriety Sisters does have Zoom meetings daily. So that is really helpful. They're not AA. They're similar, but not the same. They give feedback and it's more of a family community type feel. There are 24/7 AA meetings, 24/7 women AA meetings, and NA meetings online as well. There's the resources out there, especially with technology, is phenomenal. Like,
right.
If you have a phone, you're never more than 2 minutes away from a meeting.
Right.
So you want, or online therapy and things like that too. So it is great. And all those pages, you can post things, you can get support. It is really, really good. So
now, I mean, I know that, you know, you're really active with, you know, being a woman with, you know, women in sobriety. And I agree that, you know, it's something that everybody, you know, should be able to talk about more, because then, you know, there would be a better understanding and more people would be helped. But now that I think that musician that you saw that first time, that sober musician, was a gentleman, correct?
Yes, my friend Juan. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, what about males with sobriety?
The same. I said I don't know a whole lot of sober men, because I said I don't go to the AA meetings, and a lot of times, to me, I did see a sober group once at the beach of all these guys, and I still wanted to go and sit down. I knew it was an AA meeting, and I was like, "Hi!" I still wanted to go and join them and talk. But, you know, the same thing. I'm sure there are groups specifically. There are AA groups specifically for men. There are co-ed groups. There are online groups just for men as well. And a lot of the issues, the same thing. It's like sometimes the issues are very different with women in drinking. So that's why sometimes I feel like it's really important for women to find at least one or two, if they like to do groups, to find, or just at least friends or something. But being a sober person is being a sober person, especially in this day and age. And when I met him, he wasn't going to AA meetings either. And he was a musician. He was playing music in bars, but staying sober. And the music part was another whole part of my recovery too, because I realized I had not been going to, you know, indulging myself with the music that I enjoyed. I was so busy raising my kids, just turning on the radio to make it easier. And I love live music, and being down here in Florida, there's live music everywhere. And so
that's awesome.
The second night I was sober, I was in a bar until 2:00 in the morning. but I was sober, and I was like, it was almost like a dare, like, can I do this? And I remember Juan was performing. He's like, you probably should leave because it gets crazy after midnight. And I was like, I'm not drinking. I knew I wasn't drinking, and I was loving the music. He had his whole band playing. So yeah, and he's also doing well. He
Good.
did, yeah. He's got, I think, about almost a year, and he's got another like almost 2 years again sober. So he had, he was doing. He would never really, nothing went terrible, but he dabbled back in, and now he's sober again and doing really, really well. So he's still a wonderful friend, a friend of my entire family. They all love him. So we still go
That's great.
always checking his schedule to see music and to play, and we hang out at the beach sometimes.
Right. So. Have you seen anything with with different ethnicities and alcohol use, abuse, sobriety? Are there differences based on race?
I'm sure there are. I think the biggest difference I see is not so much in race, but in like demographics and affluence and stuff. I said that the different types of issues with people. But I don't particularly see, I don't know. I said it to me, I don't have a whole lot of experience. I said I've met women, all different races. I have friends of women that, and to be honest, we're all very similar. We might use different substances. We might have come from different backgrounds where, I've met a lot of women that their parents were alcoholics, and that's very common, or their family members, or they, it was just part of their environment. Like where I grew up, my parents didn't really drink much. It wasn't really part of, so to me, it was almost like this taboo thing that was mine. But I think everyone's story is different, and cultures are different. And, I don't think that there's actually that much. It is ubiquitous across all races, all genders, all, income levels. I think the only difference is sometimes with like people who, the drug choice might switch based on what you have access to or where you live, or, like certain environments have more. But,
right.
A drug is a drug, and, you get to a certain point, like when I was drinking, I would drink just so I always laugh. Like my husband still sometimes drinks beers, and he buys ones that I would never didn't used to like. But I was like, but when I was really drinking, there was not much that I wouldn't have drank. Like I drank vanilla extract. I drank like gross stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Whatever was on hand. So
yeah, sure.
So, yeah. But yeah, I don't know necessarily. I don't have enough info to.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It's just a question I thought of. So, I mean, I know you're married to your wonderful husband, but this topic could come up for single people. I don't know if that's anything, that you have any experience giving anyone advice on sober people or people in recovery dating.
I think the hardest thing is not when you're single and trying to get better. I think that sometimes is because you have no one else you can remove it from your home. You can reorganize your life and shift it around. The hardest one is that I've had with women I'm trying to help is when their partner is still using in a way that's problematic. That can be really, really difficult. And that those sometimes I don't know how to help them because, I know you don't necessarily want to, leave somebody, but at the same time, it's really, really, I can't imagine if my husband had been doing shots of vodka when I was trying to remain sober, that would have been, extremely difficult for me.
Right.
And for the most part, for the first year or two, like he barely drank anything, or if he did, he asked, and like, can I have a beer when we go out to dinner? And I'd be like, yes, you can. Like I was blessed. Like most people don't have that amount of support. Same with my family. Now it's, now everyone is just whatever. Like I go home to my parents and my brothers. They're having a dinner and they have a bottle of wine out, and no one thinks twice about it. It doesn't bother. It's fine. But that took years to get to that point.
Right.
As far and then there's always the standard. I still think the standard AA rule is like you shouldn't date within the first year of sobriety. And I don't like to stick to hard, fast rules, but there is some truth to that it's all about life changes. You don't want to make too many huge changes when you're cutting something out that was a huge crutch. I mean, if, 7 months into your sobriety, the man of your dreams or the woman of your dreams shows up, like, I wouldn't say don't, but just be cautious, I think.
Right.
And it is really hard for, it's always, I have a lot of friends whose husbands got sober around the same time of them, like within weeks or months. And you know, that is wonderful when it works. It scares me at times too, but like at some point there's not, you can't control anyone except yourself. I mean, that's what
Right.
it comes to. You cannot control anyone except yourself, but it is really difficult when you have another person bringing your substance of choice into your environment. It can be really, really tricky to stay on the right course when it's in your
Right.
face.
So let me ask you a question. Did people point it out to you
What, that I was drinking
about
too
your
much?
drinking? Because I know I didn't, and that's something that I feel bad that
No,
maybe I should have.
you saw me a few times.
What's that?
I said, I know you saw me a few times intoxicated.
Yeah, but not maybe as firmly. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if somebody would have just flat out really said to you, I mean, besides family, and maybe some did, I don't know, you know, Louise, you're out of control, you're an alcoholic, you're gonna die, you're gonna kill somebody, this is not good, you need to do something. How do you think you would have reacted to that?
I did have my parents were the ones that mostly said stuff. I mean, Greg was there. Greg saw it all. My husband. But I said I actually give him a lot of credit for the fact that he, just like I said, the therapist I saw in New York City, her whole program is about the science of kindness, and Greg was kind. There were a few times he got really angry with me, but for the most part, he saw that I was hurting. That there was no one like being angry at me about my drinking wasn't going to make me stop. He tried everything with me. You know, he would help. We went into debt trying to go to therapy and appointments and all those things. He would reduce his drinking, all those things. Like it was a lot, but it was more my parents, honestly, because my parents had always been on edge since I was 14 and anorexic. They were constantly watching what I was eating still whenever I went home to visit, even as a grown man. I remember that was tricky. And so they would, when they heard, like there was an incident where I drank way too much at a family baby shower. And that was my mom was in touch with Greg for weeks afterwards. Like, and I stayed sober for a couple of weeks after that too, because of like these scary incidents that people were pointing it out. But and I had some close friends that I'm still friends with to this day that saw me definitely at my worst. And I don't think anyone really knew what to say, because for the most part, the thing is I was still very much functioning to the outside.
Right.
As I said, I was still taking care of my kids, feeding them dinner, coaching their basketball teams, doing all these things that I was supposed to. I wasn't driving them drunk. That was one thing. I said there might have been 3 times in Pennsylvania I ever drove like minimally intoxicated. It was like a hard, fast rule for me. That was not something I did. So I was, the damage was minimal and very behind the scenes. And so the person who saw it the worst was my sweet husband.
Right. So what can somebody who might be going through this as a family member of someone, who is an alcoholic, that it has, or a friend that the subject hasn't been broached, what can they, like, what would you recommend that they say to that person?
I think the biggest thing is to have open communication and compassion, to realize that that person is doing this behavior, this addictive behavior, for a reason. There is something they are getting out of it. And to try to understand and try to talk to them about what it is that they're getting out of that addictive behavior and what they could possibly do to, whether it's, cut it down a little bit to start, moderate. I know that doesn't often work in the long run for a lot of things, but it can be a stepping stone. But just to open up communication and to not victim blame, to not just screaming, the yelling, the ultimatums. No one, the statistics show that people who are forced into rehab do not. I mean, I was put into so many rehabs in my early 20s by my parents, and it didn't stick because I didn't put myself. If you are forced into it out of shame, out of, you're shaming our family, or you're doing this, or and even if the parents are just scared, or the family member, or the spouse, in doing things, it is really hard, and it's difficult. It depends on also the type of addiction, because obviously they say with the opioid crisis and fentanyl, like one mistake and you're dead. Whereas with alcohol, yes, you can get behind the wheel and the same thing, but for the most part, it's not as like you're going to die tomorrow if you. But I think just meeting them where they're at, letting them know that they can come to you if they're struggling, because so much is done in secrecy and shame. And if you're not having to necessarily like hide everything, that can be really helpful as well. And just offering options of support groups. And also, I think for the people who are dealing with them as a family member, is to take care of yourself. Take care of yourself first, to go to therapy yourself. Not that they, not because you're causing a problem or anything, but to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because you can't take care of somebody else unless you're taking care of yourself. And it can be exhausting. I said the therapist that I worked with in New York City in my early 20s, that's her nonprofit is all about helping the loved ones of addicts, and her methodology is spot on. And it is basically just about the science and kindness, like using what works, and just
Right.
Group therapy, family therapy, talking with the whole group about, what the dynamics are that is causing this person, and trying to find the underlying issues, because it's not about drinking. There's something that's causing someone to drink because they're trying to mask something.
Right. Right. So as we wrap up here, tell us where we can get your book.
My book is available on Amazon. You can just type in Disintegrating into Adulthood and it should pop up. You can also go to my website, which is cpoet.art. And there's a link to Amazon there. There's also links on there to my Instagram, and you can message me on Instagram and I can send people signed copies of my book. I'm happy to do that. I always have lots of copies lying around, so I can do that as well. So if you reach out to me either on Facebook, Louise Hayes on Facebook, or on Instagram, I can mail signed copies out. They usually cost $25 for those because I have to pay for shipping, but otherwise it's $20 on Amazon. So yeah.
Okay. Did you pull up any poems by any chance that we could end with, or no? I don't want to put pressure on you if you didn't.
To end with. So yes, this is a poem, one of my favorite poems. It's called Coastal Cocktail, and it was written in November of 2021 when I was about 2.5 years sober. So, and it definitely gets into the way I used walking at the beach and writing, and how it helped me stay sober. So, Coastal Cocktail. Throw back a shot of ocean air, down a pint of sun-soaked rays. Gulp a tumbler rimmed with salt from the crescent edge of handheld waves. Not humored by mom wine jokes, shower beer, pub crawl runs, where troubled souls hide behind the normalization of altered minds. Sober's the way I choose to remain, refusing the need to ever explain what's not in my cup, my mug, my bottle, like not imbibing is somehow novel. I heard it said that each life is capped with a certain number poured from the tap. So go ahead and enjoy your wine, but for this lifetime, I've had all mine. The handles are empty, I've drained my share, defeated in triumph, I kick back my chair, and head to where only water's at play, day after day, drinking the view and walking my way towards memories written an arm's length away, holding fast with each breath, each sip from the glass, reflective of what has been poured out at last.
I love it. I love it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Look, do you see misty eyes? Can you see misty eyes from that far away?
No,
that was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. The producer, Kendall wants a book. He wants an autographed copy. So I'll connect you guys. I'll connect you guys.
Donate it to
no, listen. Now let's stop. Listen, she's a starving poet. She's got to make money, right? So cpoet.com, correct?
Yes, cpoet.art.
Yes. Oh, .art. I'm sorry. cpoet.art. SEA as in vitamin C. Wonderful, wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. I appreciate your honesty, and certainly you using your wonderful talent along with your healing process to give us this beautiful work of art that has already and will continue to help so many people. So I thank you so much for being here with us on Mental Health Mondays. Everybody who's watching, thank you. And go ahead and please share, because not only does that get Mental Health Mondays out there, but that gets more people seeing this book. And I'm telling you, if you have, and I've said this before, if you have anyone in your life who is either currently in active addiction or is recovering from an addiction, you and they really do need this book, because it made a difference for me. And my sister is the person who got the book. It made huge differences for us. So thank you, Miss Louise. And we'll do this again for book 2.
Sounds great.
Are you there?
Thank you so much for having me.
Did I lose her? Wait. Oh, are you there? Oh, we got some static. Yeah. It's the aliens. No, I'm just kidding. But we're going to wrap it up, and I'm sure Miss Louise is saying thank you to everyone, and please order her book. Mental Health Mondays with Hope. And we are on the PA Empowerment Network. Go ahead and go to our YouTube link and subscribe and check out all the other programs that we have. And remember, on Facebook, Mental Health Mondays with Hope. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great week. See you next Monday.